live. This is my third week at doing these Roam for Results live calls. First week was a complete disaster. Second week was a little bit less than a disaster. So let's hope during this third week that I have gotten slightly better at managing the tech and hosting these calls to give you the most information possible. This week, we are going to be talking about the Zotero to Roam workflow. So I'm going to give a few minutes in case that there's some folks who are still waiting to join. We are early here at 5 p.m. So 5 p.m. my time and 12 noon Eastern time. So welcome to everyone who has joined us. It's great to see you. Hi, Colby. Nice to see you there, chatting to me from YouTube Live. If you are joining us, it'd be great to hear where you're joining us from. I like to see where the students of the course come from and also the folks who are interested in the course. It's great to see. So if you want to just pop where you're from in the chat, that would be awesome. So today, we are going to talk about the workflow for using Zotero with Roam. And I think that what many of you are going to be surprised about is how little we actually need to use Zotero if we use it correctly and within the correct workflow. So what I am going to provide in the description below this live video after it has been recorded is an actual graphic illustration of the Roam for Results and Zotero workflow. But I made a promise to myself that I would not do too much preparation for these Roam for Results live. I just have an outline. And the reason is because as a perfectionist, it was holding me back from getting stuff out there for free. So in order to deliver more free content to you, I am coming to you less prepared, and I will get you the things that make this more useful after the video has gone. So hi to Colby from Canada and hi to Lee from Austin, Texas, one of my favorite cities. I bet it's really hot out there. It's not hot here in Scotland. It's quite cold. So I'm a little bit jealous of you being in Austin, Texas. So, okay, what we're going to talk about today is Zotero and Roam. And the first thing we're going to talk about is actually what you need to be able to make this work. So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need Zotero installed correctly. And I actually have a link for you that I'll stick in the comments. I don't need to reteach you how to install Zotero correctly, because guess what? Lucas from Site to Write has already done a fantastic job of showing you how to do that. So here is Lucas's video for how to install Zotero correctly as we use it within the system. I didn't see that come up in the chat, but hopefully, oh, there it is. You guys can see that. And then the second thing you need to do is to have the Roam to Zotero installation by Alex installed correctly as well. And luckily, Lucas is way ahead of me there. He beats me to the technical ones, which is good because he's better at the technical stuff than me. And he has created a fabulous video for you, knowing how to install the Zotero to Roam extension by Alex. Hello, Bill from Chicago. Nice to see you. So those are the two things that you will need in order to be able to implement the process that I am about to show you. You don't need to worry about getting it done right now, and I will definitely put those links also in the description of this video after it is posted. So if you have those two things installed, what we're going to talk about today is going to make total sense to you. So first and foremost, let's have a quick conversation about Roam and the sorry, not about Roam, about Zotero and the basics of Zotero. So the first question I want to ask is, what is Zotero good for? Well, Zotero really is a required tool, or any bibliographic tool, but we use Zotero because it integrates so well with Roam. But any bibliographic tool, hopefully Zotero, is a required tool for keeping your sources organized. I began my academic work without having a bibliographic tool installed and in use, and I have to tell you that it was a lot more difficult keeping track of my sources without such a tool. So Zotero is really good for being the core mechanism by which you track your sources. Zotero is really good at being an index. So if you treat Zotero as an index, and keep it at that top level, it's really useful. So I don't know how many of you here are old enough to remember library cards, when you went into the library and there was just rows of index cards, but that's how I kind of think of Zotero. Zotero is the index card library system, and all of the content actually lives in the library, which happens to be Roam, not Zotero. The other thing that Zotero is good for is it's good at really good at producing your bibliography for you, so that you don't have to sit sweating over your citation style and making sure that you have every comma in the right place and every period in the right place. If you set up Zotero correctly, it will automatically make sure that your referencing and your bibliography is actually perfect. So that's the next thing that Zotero is really good for. It's really good at generating citations if you use it correctly. So that's what Zotero is good for. But what is Zotero not good for? What Zotero isn't is a notebook. So I find that as I talk to other people who are using Zotero without Roam research, they are actually trying to use it as a Roam research solution. So they are actually using Zotero and trying to capture their notes within the Zotero system. And I find that that's going to make your life really difficult if you use Zotero that way. So hopefully when you see the system of how I integrate Zotero with Roam, you can create your own process based on my process, or without, basing it on my process if you want. This is just an idea for you to follow. You can see how little Zotero is really needed if we use it correctly integrated with Roam. Yeah, Colby, some of us are old and some of us are not. So some of us don't have no remembrance of library cards whatsoever. Let's go to the next step of our presentation. There are 3 phases that we are going to talk about as we go through this process. First of all, I'm just going to quickly share a comment from Colby because it's really insightful. He's saying, so basically, Zotero is good for pulling all of your resources into one area. And that is exactly right. Because when your sources are within Roam and you're using them, they're all going to be at different stages. So Zotero is kind of the overall management tool where everything is in one place and you can manage them. So let's talk about the 3 phases. There are 3 phases to the Zotero and Roam process. The first phase is getting your sources logged, so making sure your sources are captured. The second phase is getting your sources synced, so making sure that your sources and your source notes are synced effectively so that you will be able to always return to that source in Zotero and get the bibliographic data that you need. And the third phase is getting your sources out. So sources logged, sources synced, sources out. Those are the 3 things that we are going to talk about today. So let's start with sources synced. So for those of you who are taking my course, you will know that we talk a lot about how to get every single note that you take into Roam research. We are not going to go over that today. It's a whole entire 2-hour lesson in the course, so we don't really have the time to do that. But I am going to talk to you just a little bit about Readwise. So if you haven't used readwise.io, I would suggest that you look at it. It is a collation tool where it will take every note that you take in every kind of format and get it into your Roam research database. Sorry, I didn't mean to start with sources synced. I meant to start with sources logged, so I'm skipping ahead. So we're actually starting with sources logged. Ignore the Readwise for now. So we're starting with sources logged. So what we're going to do is we're going to get, during the sources logged phase, we're going to get all of our sources listed and categorized within Zotero. So before we do that, let's take a quick look at Zotero and see how it is organized. This is really just Zotero Basics, but it's just enough to get our appetite whetted. So let me hold on and share my Zotero screen with you so that you can hear what I'm talking about. And here we have the Zotero screen. I'm just going to go solo here so that you can just see the screen and still hear me speak. And what we have in Zotero, if you haven't been in Zotero before, this is what it looks like. We're actually in my little test Zotero that I use for teaching. And you'll see that there are several levels to Zotero. The first is my library, and that actually pretty much stays the same. You can have one library in Zotero, but you have this great feature of actually moving your Zotero sources into what are called collections, which are these little folders here. You can see that I have 3 folders, and this is more or less what my real Zotero looks like, in that I have a folder where I keep all of the sources that I have imported into Roam research, and I call those active. And the reason that those are called active is because once they are inside of Roam research, I know that I'm going to be using them in my thesis. And you'll see how that happens as we move through the process. Then I have my thesis staged folder, which holds all of the resources that I have collected, but I actually haven't either noted or synced with Roam research yet. And we're going to see that again in the process. Then you'll see that I actually use my Zotero for my own personal means as well. So I have a Roam garden folder, and that will, in my own Zotero, is actually segmented into separate collections based on topic. So you'll see that I have become a real Zotero convert. And not only do I use Zotero for my academic work, but I also use it for my extensive non-academic work as well. And the reason that I do that is because I have found that it's really, really helpful to link to the bibliographic source so that you can always revisit where you came from. Okay, so the other thing about Zotero is when you go to one of the actual sources, you'll see that it captures all of the information about your source on this right-hand side panel. This right here is the citation key. That's going to become very important to us as we move through this process. You can actually store any kind of information that you want within this section. I actually sometimes use these fields for my own purposes. So I always try where it says location in archive, I always try and say where the actual physical source is. So is it on my Kindle? Is it a hard copy? Is it something I've ordered from the library, etc. The other feature in Zotero is tags. And what I have found is when I was originally using a different bibliographic source, that I use tags a lot to say exactly what status my source was in. Was I reading it? Was I collecting from it? Had I synthesized it? I don't use those anymore because that all happens within Roam. as you will see. So basically, this is Zotero, and Zotero for me acts like my index card database. It is just the overall gathering place for all of my sources. So that is the way that Zotero looks. Let's talk about how we would log our sources. And Colby is actually asking, is sources logs happens in the capture phase? In the 4 phases that we talk about during the course, which is collect, curate, synthesize, and create, the source collection can actually happen within any of these of 3 of those sessions. And we're going to talk about each one and how you address the fact that you need to collect a source in each session without moving yourself outside of the session. So if you are not a student of the course, just stay tuned with the fact that we approach within these 4 sessions. We won't be able to go in depth into what these 4 sessions are, but you will hear us talking about it. So it's probably important that I address those 4 things. So let's first of all talk about what happens if you discover a source within your collect session. So I'm assuming that your collect session, you are actually taking your smart notes. Let me just address a question. We've got a question from Bill. He says, you don't collect sources under topic headings. Within Zotero, no, I do not. Within Roam Research, yes, I do. I tag them with the topics. Within Zotero, I don't, because I don't find a reason to, because all of the source management really happens, of the content really happens within Roam Research. So like I said, I use Zotero more as an index, and I don't go any deeper than indexing. And there's no reason to index them under topics in Zotero when I have them indexed under topics in Roam Research. If it helps you to index them under topics in Zotero, then absolutely put that in your process. But for me, I don't actually need to do that. So we're talking about collecting. You're in the collect session. Let's say you are marking a PDF that you are going to save through Readwise into Roam Research, and you see a particular source that you would like to look at later on. The only thing you do in a collect session is you do not start trying to load that, going to find that and trying to put it in Zotero. And the reason that you don't is because you are in the middle of note-taking and you do not want to distract yourself. So the only thing you do in a collect session is you actually just mark the source as a note and add the tag, and the tag can be anything you want, but for me, I add for Zotero. So I'll show you what that looks like while I share my screen in Roam Research. So let me just go to one of my sources that I know that I just took, so I would know it would be in there. You'll see that this source has already been synthesized, but you'll see that I did bring in some other particular sources that I wanted to get in Zotero, but so that I didn't break up my note-taking, I just marked it for Zotero, and you'll see what happens to that within the curation phase of these steps, within the sync phase of these steps. Okay, so if you are in your collect phase and you are collecting your smart notes, don't stop collecting your smart notes and throw yourself out of your session in order to get it into Zotero. Just mark it for Zotero and move on. Oh, sorry, you can't see the screen. Sorry, let me show you. I thought I was getting better at this, but there you go. Here we go. You can see it right here. Right here, you can see it's marked for Zotero. So this is the source that I have pulled in as I was taking notes, and I marked it for Zotero so that I didn't throw myself out of my note-taking session. And you can see that I have a few more sources that I have marked here as well. And usually what happens is if I'm marking a PDF, I have the PDF open in one window, and then I have a second version of the PDF open in another window on the bibliography portion, so that I can just quickly hop in and grab sources that look interesting based on my reading. Okay, so that is what you do if you are in the collect session. But what happens if you are actually in the synthesize session? So what happens if you have your source already in Roam Research and you are already working on synthesizing? If you don't know what synthesizing is, it basically just means processing your notes. If you're in the course, you will have seen me do that. If you're not in the course, it's not something we have the time to cover right now. But if you are synthesizing and you come across another source that you think might be interesting, you would just do the same thing, mark it for Zotero. So if you're in the collect session, you mark it for Zotero. If you are in the synthesize session, you would mark it with Zotero. Now, the difference comes when you are in your curate session. So as you know, when you are in your curate session, it's when we're going to be doing all of the that's when we're going to be doing all of the administrative stuff that we do while we are cleaning up and getting ready to do other stuff in our thesis. So during the curate session, if you come across a source, you're just going to put it straight into Zotero. You also are going to take time during the curate session to go back to your Roam Research page and open your Voice for Zotero page and go through these sources one by one. As you can see, I'm a little bit behind on my catch up. Go through these sources one by one and enter them into Zotero. So I am going to assume, and maybe this is a bad assumption, that you guys know how to get items into Zotero. You can see, actually, let me just quickly switch back here. You can see that up in the corner of my screen here, I have the Chrome extension. That's this right here. And that is anytime I am on a source within Chrome, I can just click, especially if I'm in my school library, I can just click on this extension and it will add the page into Zotero, into whatever folder I tell it to add it into. The other way you can do it if you want is just download the PDF and drag and drop the PDF just right onto the Zotero screen. Zotero will process that PDF for you, label it, and you are ready to go. So that's it now. You have all of your sources captured in Zotero. Everything is in there first. So before you start to work on a source within Roam Research, you just got everything captured in Zotero. So now the next step is to sync your sources, right? So now it's time to get your sources into Zotero and into Roam Research and have them linked together. So how do you do that? Well, let's go back to my Roam Research screen. What you'll see is, I'm just going to go to yesterday because I know I did this. What you'll see is that I actually was taking notes on a PDF yesterday. This PDF was called Unspeakable Conventionality, the Perversity of the Kindle. And what I did was I read and noted this PDF offline. So not online. I did it actually on my Mac within the preview page. I highlighted and noted it, and then I uploaded it to Readwise. So Readwise.io is where you want to try and collect as many of your notes. Then I have a process wherein when Readwise brings over the sources into my Roam Research, it prefaces them with this reconcile, and you can set that up in Readwise to do that. You can make Readwise give you whatever header you want when your source comes in. So when a source comes into my Roam Research, it comes in with a reconcile page. That means that I know that that source is not yet in Roam Research and needs to be synced. So if I go ahead and I search the reconcile page, you'll see that I've left 2 here so that you can see how this works. I have left a thesis, an academic reconcile, and also my own a personal reconcile. So this is a book that I'm reading, and I actually keep that in all my personal stuff in Zotero as well, so I can sync that. So how do you sync it? Well, the first thing you are going to do is make sure when you have Zotero to Roam installed that you click on the little book icon in your upper right-hand side. It's orange right now, but it's going to turn green. And when it turns green, it means it is ready to use. So it actually can sync together. It actually can bring resources in from your Zotero database. So the way that I do it is I'm going to open this particular page in the left side panel, and you're going to see why in a moment. So I've opened the page in the left side panel, and you can see that on this page, here are all my notes that I took from, these are just smart notes, they haven't been synthesized yet, from the PDF, and they're waiting to be synthesized in Roam Research. But I don't want to synthesize them until I have synced the sources together, so that when I synthesize them, I have the cite key ready and available for me to use. So what do? Well, I go up to this little icon, and I right-click, and I say Search in Dataset. And I know this is called something to do with Kindle. So I type Kindle, and you can see it has gone into my Zotero data, and it has showed me that this resource is available. So I click on that, and it will open up, and I will say import metadata. And I have a special metadata header that Alex actually made for me that we give to the folks who are in the course to use. That's really neat and tidy, that I love, that fits in with our course process. I can actually provide that. A list of other different metadata headers for this in the description below. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go directly to the Roam page. So what you'll see happens is it will open up the Roam page in the left-hand panel. So I need to get my notes from here to here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on my notes and just scroll down until I've got all of them, which takes like 5 seconds. And then I'm just going to drag everything over into this panel. I'm not going to worry too much about, it doesn't need to be option dragged. I don't need to have any references, because this is my main, this is now my main page for this particular source. And you'll see that it automatically comes in my metadata with a source active status, which means that I know that it still needs to be synthesized. Now, what do I do with this page? Well, I don't really need this page anymore. This page was really only for Readwise to bring it in. So I'm going to use the Simply Magic. Let me make sure that Workbench is on. Yeah, I'm going to use the Simply Magic Workbench. I'm going to press Control and semicolon. I'm going to tell it to swap pages. Oops. And so that I can get that into my main page, so it's very easy for me to just delete. So do you really want to delete this? Yes, I do. So now you'll see I actually have the cite key and the notes synced all on one page. So we've gone through the sources logged, and now we have done sources synced. So how do you get your sources out? Which is the final step. So to get our sources out, we just simply need to have installed the methodology for exporting Roam to Zetler to Word. This is in the course. It's not something I can go over right now because it's too extensive, but I will show you an example of how that works within the database, just so you can see how neat and sexy it actually is. So I'm going to go over to my outlines and drafts where I have an output ready to show you how it works. Roam is very slow when I have sharing on. And you can see I have two outlines here. One is my actual real life thesis because we're in my personal database. And here is my Zotero to Roam output example. I've pretended that I've actually written a piece of writing and I have cited it. So I've said, this is an example of a piece of writing within Roam that has citations. And then this is how, and then you'll see a citation. There are lots of citations after every sentence. You'll see another citation. They should really have all the page numbers. So you'll see a citation with a page number. And then Lisa Marie will show you how to get these in so they aren't messed up while we are talking. So right now I'm going to say, let's say I wanted to cite that article we were just on. It's a single bracket that you look at, and then you need to copy the cite key. Now, the way you do that is you open your Roam again, and we can look up the Allen article. And you can turn on this quick copy button. And if you do that, it instantly just drops the cite key into the brackets. But for some reason, my quick copy isn't working, and I haven't had time to fix it yet. So I actually just go in here and say copy cite key. So you copy the cite key, press escape, put the cite key in between the single brackets, and then you will see that you have all of the cite keys in here. So how do you get them out? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to press Control-O while you're in there to open it up into a single page. Make sure you have right-clicked on the bullet and said View as Document, and I have, because this says View as Bulleted List. Then you are going to go to Roam 42. You're going to go to Converter. You're going to choose GitHub flavored Markdown with Flatten, and you're going to save that. And when you save that, it's going to produce a file for you. I'm going to get to your questions in a minute, Colby. I see you have some questions, so we'll answer them when we've gotten through this. So it creates a file, which then you are able to open in Zotero. And let me show you what that looks like in Zotero. Hold on while I share that screen with you. Here we go. Here it is in Zotero. You can see that it has come out, and it has actually put in all the citations. Now, I use an obscure citation style called HRMA because that's what my university requires. So these citations are lovely, but they are not right for me. But guess what? It's okay because you can set it up with your citation style so that when you click this button and you send it to Word, it comes out like this. So hold on for 1 second while I share that screen with you, and I will show you what it comes out like. And it is just super exciting. Here we go. Here you go. Here we are in that Word document, and you will see that it's actually my citation style. So it's put them all in as footnotes. You'll see the footnotes at the bottom of the page, and also it has automatically inserted the bibliography in the correct format as well. So this is why you must use Zotero, because if you don't use Zotero, you cannot get citations out of Roam. It is absolutely impossible, and you do not want to be doing this kind of citing by hand. That would be an absolute nightmare. So there we go. We've gotten your sources into Zotero. We've gotten your sources in Zotero synced with your Roam research. We've gotten your sources into Zotero. We've gotten your sources synced in with your Roam research, and we have gotten your sources out of Zotero while we use it as a bibliography and citation tool. So that is my Zotero in Roam research workflow. Like I said, I'm going to provide you with the a graphical illustration of that process, and actually maybe I'll give you a JSON of the whole process itself once I do that work, but I did not want to do it ahead of time because I wanted to make sure that I was not a perfectionist and I would get this stuff out. So let's address some of your questions. Please put all of your questions in the chat, and I will address them. So Colby asks, is it good for your own resources or only online based? I'm not 100% sure what if I'm getting your question right, but if you're asking, is it good for resources that you have in print? Absolutely. You can get print resources into Roam Research through a scanner pen or through Otter AI or some kind of other vocal tool, and you would use it exactly the same. You would just title that page as a reconcile page and then get that resource into Zotero. Okay, and then we have another question. Colby is asking, is it able to deal with images as well? I'm not quite sure what you mean by, I saw this actually, Colby, you sent this to me via email, so I'm sorry I didn't address it sooner, because I wasn't quite exactly sure what you meant by kind of deal with images. Roam Research can most certainly deal with images. I don't think that Zotero can reference a specific image. I think you'd have to put the image into the source page of wherever that image was coming from. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, and Viv is asking, do you use tags in Zotero? And if so, what's your workflow process? I used to use tags in Mendeley. I use them all the time to say when, at what point the source was in my usage process. So was it new? Had I started reading it? Was it still active? Was it complete? Now I do all of that in Roam Research. I prefer to do it right directly on the page where my notes are. So there are tags in Zotero. They automatically import, and you can use them to maybe find specific resources that are associated with a specific topic. And as you start to build your resources, you might want to do that, sort them by topic. But I don't use them in that way just now. But absolutely, if tags should be part of your process, put them into your process for sure. Okay, Colby is asking, citation is basically being a bibliography. Yeah, it's both. So citation, it happens within your paper and also happens at the end of your paper as a bibliography. So you have to cite the sources that you're using as you're using them, and then you also have to include a bibliography or a works cited section. And Zotero is capable of producing both, so that's not a problem. And Bill is asking, what is the advantage of having readwise quotes with the reconcile header versus Lucas's approach in which the quote comes into Roam with the cite key? I'm not 100% sure, Bill, what you're talking about with Lucas having the quote come into Roam with the cite key, because you can type it directly into Roam under the cite key if you want to do that. But when it goes through Readwise, it means that I'm not doing any manual retyping. Everything just happens automatically. So when I read a PDF and I upload the PDF, I don't have to take notes in Roam. The notes are imported into Roam. When I am reading on a Kindle and I'm making my notes in Kindle, I don't have to retype them into Roam. They are imported into Roam. Readwise has a way that you can take physical highlights from a physical book and just take a picture, and those get imported into Roam. So that's just the difference, is that if I were manually typing in the notes, I would automatically put them under the cite key right away, but I very rarely type directly into Roam Research. The only time I do that is when I'm reading a physical book and I'm using my scan marker pen, and that way I would set up the cite key first and foremost. So that's the difference. Colby is asking, if you are taking screenshots from PDFs, modules, can you refer to these images, or is Zotero more focused on the article? Yes, Zotero is about source management. Zotero is not about notes management. That happens in Roam Research. So if you go back to the initial pros and cons we were talking about of Zotero, is if you limit Zotero distinctly to being your index of your sources, and you don't try and take any notes or have anything specific in Zotero, you can keep that all in Roam Research. And because they're connected, it's very easy to work with both. JM Hill is asking, so you mean the site key comes in with readwise? No, the site key does not come in with readwise. That's why we do the reconcile process. So everything comes in through, I don't have to retype the whole huge page of notes into Roam Research. It happens automatically. The only thing I have to do when it comes in is sync it with the site key. And that's what I illustrated during the curate phase. Just sync it with the site key, get rid of the page that readwise brought in, and that's my process for making sure that everything is synced. Okay. Yes, Colby is saying the sources for your images. Yes, the sources for your images should be the article that they came from, and the images themselves that you want to save, you should save within Roam Research, not within Zotero. So reference the article in Zotero, sync the article with your site key page in Roam Research, and have the images that you want to keep on that page within Roam Research. It's very, very easy to upload images. Okay, so Colby has one more question. Sounds like Dropbox might be more suited for image source, and Zotero might be all article based. Roam Research is suited for image source. Zotero is for tracking bibliographic sources. I wouldn't go anywhere near Evernote. That's just me. I would just keep my images in Roam Research. I don't really see a reason to use Evernote at all. You can upload images into Roam Research and manage them there. Okay, I think that's all we have time for today. Thanks very much for coming and hanging out with me on Roam for Results Live. I'm going to try and do these every week. They're not always going to be academic. Most of them probably won't be as I get into releasing some of the other courses that we're doing for Roam for Results. But I want to get as much free content out there as possible. So I'm going to try and do these live without doing too much preparation, because otherwise it takes me too long and I don't get it out. So thanks very much for joining us today, joining me today. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, add process to your input and you will get magical output. Onwards and upwards. Bye.